so I talked to the LDAP server directly. Let's try to use like the non-mouse. Okay, cool. Can I deploy the change to the tracing changes to the non-mouse? I ran the better cloud integration tests against dev. Yeah. Yeah, everything passed. There was one flake and I rerun it and everything passed.
As a reminder, please sign in on the attendee list and add anything to the agenda that you'd like to chat about today. Get started in 1 minute. All right, let's kick things off. So first thing on the list is review outstanding project level RFCs. I think there's one project level RFC, which is the Paketo Community Charter. Forrest, you didn't add that to the agenda. Did you want to talk about that today? It's in draft, so we wouldn't talk about it normally.
Yeah, I meant to try and get it out of draft. I just didn't have the time to put the last stuff on it. It should be done by the end of today and actually ready to consider. Sorry, guys.
No worries. Did you want to talk about it at all during this meeting or save it for next time?
Nothing has really changed in my next draft other than sort of formalizing more around what I mean by actively maintained. Yeah, but other than that, it's basically the same to move forward. So I might just move it into once I have that done.
Sounds good. Next thing on the list is idle issues, stacks, and builders.
Yeah, I just noticed that there are some issues in those two repos that appear to be idle, aren't being worked, haven't been responded to in some time. And whoever the maintainers of those repos are should probably have another pass at those and make sure that the community is being prioritized there.
Stacks and builders fall under what subteam again? Do we figure that out at some point?
I know that stacks is eventually going to be release engineering, but I think builders is still release engineering today. I don't think anyone from that sub-team is in this meeting.
That makes sense. I think they're currently rechartering to just focus their team on stacks and builder, like I guess not builders in particular, because that's more of integrating the Buildpacks with the stacks, but on stacks. And so we should figure something out for builders, like who should monitor that repo. And then I'll let the RelEng team know to keep track of the stacks repo. They are officially part of the project and should show up here if they can make it also. I don't know if that's super clear to them right now. Cool. And it looks like Cash App's adding one in.
Yeah, I think I shared this out to most of you. This is just, everyone should have access, should be public facing. Just a Paketo roadmap draft I put together. So like Paul and Emily and Ben, if y'all could take a look at that and like add in whatever feedback, that would be awesome. Yeah, hoping to like publish something in like the next week or two, I hope. It's written like in the blog format, but I think Forrest and I are going to work towards getting like an RFC style roadmap as well, similar to what the CNB project has. But yeah.
Cool. Definitely encourage people to check that out. There's a lot of good stuff in there. It's like it definitely follows that kind of format that we did for Cloud Native Buildpacks, where it's like, you know, what are our large goals for this year as a project, instead of being a prioritized list of things. Cool. Anything else this week? I had a question for Ben about the Graal work for Java and Tiny. I saw somewhere that you wanted to pull some stuff back out of Tiny again. I just want to make sure that we don't add it and then release it and then remove it. If that makes sense.
I assume Tiny's already been released many times since some of it went in. It was so libz gets to come back out, and we get to basically send Tiny back to what it was originally.
Sounds good.
Assumed that they were going to only statically compile in like lib standard C++ and whatever the hell the other one was, but they went whole hog and added libz as well. So good result, an unexpected result on their part, but it would take us even closer to what distroless and what Tiny used to be.
Makes sense. We don't have a lot of people using the Tiny image in production, so practically at this point, I think it's okay to, you know, remove a thing. But in the future, we should think about how we want it, because it would be an ABI breakage to remove it, right? It's technically like not the not the thing we're supposed to do, but I think it's okay for now.
Maybe we should have added it as a mix-in. That gives us an out, right?
We did probably add it to the mix-in, because we add all the packages to the mix-in labels.
Just define in a mix-in though, then you
in
change the mix-in when you bring it back out, and I think it's fine. Like, you haven't broken your contract at that point. You've just changed which contract your image implements.
For IO Buildpacks Dex Bionic, when we distribute that, we put all the package names in mix-ins, regardless of whether they're defined to be in the base thing anyways. And so like, but what matters is how we've defined IO Buildpacks Dex Bionic as a set of packages. And we haven't defined Tiny as a set of packages yet, anywhere formally.
I'll set that.
So, you know, technically it's probably okay.
Practically, it was already okay. I'm just giving us all an excuse here.
Yeah, good excuse. All right. Anything else from anybody?
I have a quick question. Ben, there was a Slack thread you started like yesterday evening, I think, around like dependency prefixing or something like that. I was a little like confused by this. Could you share a little more, or like, I guess what we should do project-wide around this?
Yeah, somebody asked a question about when they are running Paketo build packs specifically, so not Tanzu build packs, but Paketo build packs in enterprise environments, whether that's inside of something like Kpack or pack directly on their machine, what have you, something like that. It is very common for enterprises to have firewalls that disallow certain domains. And GitHub is a common one in enterprises. They don't want people pushing their corporate code to GitHub. A very large number of our build packs download from GitHub. The ones that don't, I managed to go extract the entire list. Coincidentally, there are exactly 100 dependencies in our Bionic builder, or sorry, our full CF builder at the moment. Other ones are domains that will not have been allowed either. Typically, these are handled as broadly both allowed and disallowed lists. and basically no one's going to be able, in those environments, their current download behavior is going to be completely broken. It is common for developer critical things, then they just replicate them into a repository somewhere in their own enterprise, but not necessarily in the same directory structure. So you can't do something as simple as swapping out a domain name the way you might with like a Maven repo or a Go repo or something like that. Sometimes it's just like a bunch of flat files just sitting somewhere, so the developers can have access to them. And so we likely want to come up with some sort of general solution about this. I don't know, like given the scale of it, I have no idea how to even begin to approach the problem here, unfortunately.
Naively, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna propose a straw man solution. If you have a question, it's probably should come first.
Yeah, so how is this different from like Dan has had an RFC, I thought, around like offline packaging or something? Would this solve this problem?
Offline packaging is not a candidate solution for anything having to do with Paketo. We have a CFF driven policy that we don't currently ship offline build packs.
They're also very large, and so they're not always the best solution for solving a problem of like they're a great solution if you need to have totally air gap builds, which is a use case that a lot of enterprises have. But because there are some things that don't have nice redistribution licenses in them that we don't want to package with the build packs and then ship on, largely for that reason, we don't, and also because it's expensive to distribute a lot of like 20 gigabyte builders, right, all the time. And would a user want it, right? Like the first time somebody does, pack build, it goes and downloads, say, the Bellsoft Liberica JVM build pack that we package by default. For most users, they only need about 30 megs of the dependencies in there. If we packaged an offline build pack, it'd be like 800 megs of dependencies, only 30 of which they'd ever use. So there is a compelling argument that for most not air gap solutions, offline build packs are actually worse. This one is debatable, this particular use case. What about partial packaging? So something Dan's RFC would support is packaging just, or like from my interpretation of it, Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, would be just packaging the latest patch versions or the latest patch version of the latest dependency line or whatever. How would you weigh that against just the ability to package build packages that way? How would you weigh that against the ability to configure the prefix?
It doesn't particularly help me because I only basically have the latest 8, the latest 11, the latest 14, so major lines, but I need both JDKs and JREs because I don't know if you're going to compile from source or not. And so with the exception of maybe leaving out the 14s, which almost nobody should be using, the difference between 8 and 11, you've got to have 4 of the 6 of those to be sort of broadly applicable. Picking just the JRE for 11 isn't likely to be a great use case for most Java developers. But but weighing that against the prefixing, I have no idea. Like we did this in the old Java build pack, in the Cloud Foundry Java build pack, by basically having a way for you to change the host name, and you were required to replicate our repository, right? Our unified all downloads come from here repository in its structure. We even wrote a script to do like an AWS sync against our bucket. But we've moved to this new dependency thing where we don't maintain any centralized, structured repository that all links could go to, and you could get away with doing a uniform replication and swapping out a host name. And even that, a lot of people complained about. But like, we don't have that, right? Some of them go, and look at Bellsoft's URLs. Some look at GitHub URLs. Some look at Microsoft Azure URLs. Like, who knows? The arbitrary requirement to swap out any URL that might be downloaded anywhere from the internet to any other place inside your own network is just like an intractable problem.
What if you could use config maps to mount something into the platform dir that had a mapping of dependency name and version to override URL that the build pack would then respect at build time?
Yeah, maybe.
Then you could configure it right in your cluster, right? all Ruby, this is go here instead. Pure Kate's configuration.
Yeah, like it'd have to be like it's one of those things that you'd eventually have to keep up to date as Buildpacks moved on and the dependency versions moved on. But sure, right, like a single unified place for every possible dependency that you might need to do. Yeah, maybe.
That could be a feature in Kpack and a feature in Paketo Buildpacks that work together.
Yeah.
Wonder if it's worth driving on the Kpack side first though, or like talking to them and then getting a good some kind of consensus RFC going.
Oh, config. That's interesting. But like it'd just be a single file though, right? You're talking about config maps, but like the content of it is just a single TOML file that's a bunch of maps, right?
Could be a config map that does a file per directory invert. Like I think you can do it any way you want because a config map can be any number of files that get written to disk.
Yeah.
It could be within a directory, and you could use the directory structure to represent the names and versions, or it could just be one giant TOML file that the Buildpacks read that gets mounted in.
Yeah, that's certainly not the worst thing I've heard. So I'd be willing to give that a go. Yeah. But it is a very weird thing. Like this is one of those things that like the Heroku team never has to deal with, right? Because they're basically always online. They're never behind these weird firewalls, these weird exclusionary network setups. So
yeah, that makes sense. It's definitely specific to our use cases.
Yeah.
Anybody else have thoughts on the underlying problem or questions? Cool. I guess where's the right place to open an RFC about that? Maybe a Paketo, top-level Paketo RFC would be the place to propose something, and then an RFC for Kpack too. They have an RFC mechanism in open source now. Bring it up with Big New too. Cool. All right. Last thing was dependency prefixes. Anything else anybody want to chat about? Going once, going twice. All right. Thanks, everybody.
See.
Have a great Tuesday.